Welcome to People Who Plan, Inside the Minds of Modern Operators, with Michael Rossiter and Jeremy Pump. This week, we're in conversation with Archie Durfee, the Senior Director of Sourcing and Supply Planning at Rowe and founding member of Startups, a collaborative community for operators. Prior to joining Rowe, Archie was the Senior Director of Planning at Quip. Welcome to the pod, Archie. Let's get started.
Archie Durfee, welcome to the pod. Archie is the Senior Director of Sourcing and Supply Planning at Rowe, which, as we were just getting into kind of before we started recording here, it's just an industry that's just taken off. Archie, welcome.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So tell me about this new product you got. We were chatting about this before we started. There's this new product you just came out with, and it's causing some uniqueness in your supply chain. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so we just launched the Wegovy pill, which is the first GLP-1 medication to come in a pill form through Novo Nordisk. And so it's been a challenge. The volume is very high. I think there's been a lot of people on the sideline of waiting to try a GLP-1, having needle phobia or just not feeling ready. And this is a very approachable form factor. And the planning challenges are definitely high, where it's a very expensive medication. And so we're needing to balance all sorts of different stuff to make sure that we have the right levels of supply. But it's been a fun ride so far.
That's amazing. And this is just on the back of already an exploding industry as well. Talk to me about some of the constraints that you operate under in planning in your world.
Yeah, so before Rowe, I was in more traditional CPG world. And so needing to learn all the constraints of, distributing medication, there's definitely a lot. So dealing with shipping from a pharmacy, every pharmacy needs to have its own license to ship medication to different states. And so, our pharmacy network has something like 300 licenses to ship to different states because you got to have interdependencies. And then also, once you get the inventory to these pharmacies, most of the time you can't move that inventory. So there's no rebalancing of supply. And so it really is a challenge. And then you add on to it expiration dating, where at Rowe, we actually offer monthly, quarterly, 6-month, or 12-month plans. And so if you think about sending 12 months of medication to a patient, you have to make sure that you have at least 12 months of shelf life for that medication that you're distributing. There definitely is a lot of constraints that you're trying to deal with and data nuances to make sure that you ultimately have the medication that you need to ship to the patients.
Yeah, it's a really impressive challenge, right? And just being able to handle that. It's like you're essentially encoding or like designing this network, right? And all the relationships between all the factors in the network all the time. Man, that's got to be one of the more, because a finished goods network, but in some respects, there's like bundles, right? And you got to send the syringes with the medicine or whatever, some cases, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You would think of it as, okay, it's like mostly finished goods, maybe some bundles, but then you kind of take a step back, like, no, this is a serious one.
Yeah. Well, I was telling Jeremy that, I feel like every industry has its pushes and pulls where it's like, oh, this is really hard, but then this part is a little bit easier. So like in pharma, the good news is that normally you can get your drugs next day, right? Your lead time's super short. Distributors mostly have this medication ready to be distributed. And so that all of a sudden becomes a little bit easier to deal with. It's been, for everything that's really difficult, there oftentimes are some things like, oh, well, this makes it a little bit easier.
Right on. Well, I mean, there's so much there that we could talk about, but one of the things we love to learn about folks who join us on People Who Plan is like, I don't know your background in terms of getting into planning, getting into ops, but like Jeremy and I both fell ass backwards into it. So what was your superhero origin story of getting into planning?
So I actually went to school for sport management. So I was working with the PGA and doing like sports events and things like that. I was like, that's what I'm going to do. Then coming out of school, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, can't find a job. My then girlfriend, now wife, decided to move to Chicago. We were like, we're gonna move there. I ended up temping at this company as a customer service rep. I joined Radio Flyer, temporal. I'm answering phone calls, getting people's replacement parts for their wagons and tricycles and stuff like that. And my the director of ops was, hey, anybody want to stay after hours? Want to come down to the warehouse and help pick orders? And I was like, sure, yeah, I'll go down, start picking orders.
Do they pay you for that? Hopefully they paid you.
Sure. Of
They
course
paid in
That's like
wagons.
purely voluntary.
But then, I really found a liking to it. I feel like the director of ops was like, this kid's got something. And so then I moved into more of the operations side of the business and almost did like a rotational program where was doing logistics scheduling with trucks for retail orders. And then I was doing more of managing warehouse layout for all of our replacement parts. And then I was implementing a WMS, and then I was eventually managing the entire warehouse. And so it was just kind of this progression. And it was like a tour where I learned what it takes to do operations, and then finally was ready to go back to New York. Found Quip, which was a very early stage startup at that point. Joined still doing fulfillment, was doing the fulfillment ops for Quip. And that's where the VP of ops at the time was doing all the planning, and was like, hey, I need some help doing this. And you look smart, you can do something. And I started doing the planning, and he slowly was like, okay, do more. And then by month 3, I was doing all the inventory planning for Quip.
So I think like the thread here, consistency, is you were doing this rotational program, you were doing lots of different things, but you're kind of like learning different things, learning how to do things. Like what was motivating for you in that? Like why did you? Not everyone does that. Not everyone wants to go and be like, oh, my job is to learn a new job all the time.
I think that's just kind of my nature, as I get a little bored of repetitiveness. And so I'm always interested in new things. And so whenever there's opportunities that come up, I often will raise my hand and be like, hey, I'm interested in doing that. When I was at Radio Flyer, we had to redesign, we were working with Tesla to do this Tesla ride-on toy. And we had to design our whole pick pack operation. And I was like, hey, I want to do this. And they were like, okay, sure, go for it, right? And then since I designed the pick pack, they were like, oh, well, actually, we're going to open up an EU warehouse. So you're going to go to Europe and open up the warehouse. So I learned how to do that. And so I feel like I've taken the things that I've raised my hand for, similar to the planning at Quip. That's how I started going to China, because we were facing inventory shortage and we were going to run out of brush heads and we needed to scale tooling. And my boss was like, we got to go to China. So I was like, how do I get my visa? And so off we went.
That's awesome. This is one of your radio hires. This was, gosh, he's 8 now. So that was 10 months at the time. But
it's awesome, man. Awesome.
I think that's like one of the threads, Michael, that we've found, and just thinking back and talking to folks on this podcast and thinking of Lindsay Skegan from last week is, she told this story, Archie, of wanting this job, and goes to this recruiter and says, well, you don't have retail experience. So she's like, well, all right, fine. I'll go get a retail job on the weekends and keep my regular job, right? And it's just like constantly kind of checking the boxes and the foundation of like, yep, okay, give me a little bit. Okay, I've mastered that. Give me a little bit more, master that. And just keep like building off of that foundation.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like unpaid internships, I think, kind of deservedly get a bad rap. But the reason that they're high signal is that they show agency, right? Like, it's like you're going to do what it takes and try and jump in and learn a new thing. And like, especially in the world today where you can learn anything with AI almost instantly, right? It's like, it doesn't really matter the experience that you have. I mean, it helps, obviously, but just the willingness to dive in and learn is like the attribute that matters almost more than anything else. Which,
yeah, I think what comes to mind is persistence. You can't teach persistence. And I think that's like in supply chain, probably one of the most important things, right? If you're a planner, following up, squeaky wheel it gets the grease. How can you get that PO faster? What's the production lead time? Tell me everything about that production lead time. Can we do OT? Is there any way that we can pay for something else? Is there another material we can use? And it's like that persistence is like what goes, where other people could just be like, hey, they told me it's 8-week lead time.
Is that, I mean, it's hard to teach, but like, is that like you lead teams? Like, how do you observe that playing out on your teams?
I think it is a little bit of, you definitely have to teach the right questions and learn like, how do you ask the right questions? And I think that's something that's like, it is, you kind of just like learn in experience. That said, I also think that like I've been telling my team, I'm like, use AI, right? To be your like, your bulldog coach, to be like, hey, what questions do I ask to the supplier? Like, this is my situation. How do I dig deeper in? And it's really helped. I've seen it as just like, hey, some of my analysts get it and they thrive, and then some analysts don't. And it's a challenge, explaining the why, explaining how, hey, for everything that you plan, you probably should have an idea of like how to trace it all the way back to the beginning, right? It's not just like, oh, I buy it from this distributor. It's like, oh, well, where's the distributor get it from? Oh, it gets from this manufacturer. How long does that manufacturer take to make their manufacturing? How often are they running this production, right? And it's hard to do that for everything, but I think curiosity is also super important, because then it's like, you need to know that information only when things get really challenging. But then when it's really challenging, that's not maybe the time to, it's harder to get those answers when the supplier's being more protective and doesn't want to give you bad news and all that stuff.
Mm. Yeah. So it's like setting the expectation and building a culture around it.
Yeah.
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 Nosy.
Michael, remember that one time? Remember when we wanted to change the color of cars at Tesla, like before they went into production? Like went to manufacturing. Like, yeah, we want to change the color of cars, and they're like, no, you can't do that. The order is already submitted. And it was like, yeah, but has it been painted yet? They're like, no. But we figured out a way. It was, I forget whatever the lead time had to be, but we were able to find that compromise there and like, get ourselves some more flexibility.
Yeah. I mean, that's the level up, right? Is like if you go from a world of managing a plan in a spreadsheet with all these fixed variables to a world where actually what you're doing is managing the variables and making the variables more flexible. And yeah, anyway, like, of course, philosophically for us, it's like, how do you elevate the team out of like turning the crank on the plan, where like, yes, and into the world of improving the system itself, improving the variables, shortening lead times.
Yeah.
Sing off Bob Bliss so that that was the head of production planning, production control at Tesla at the time. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
Archie, I wanted to ask you about startups. And so you're an advisor for startups. You're a founding member of startups. Tell me about how you got connected there. And for folks who don't know or haven't heard of startups, it's a great community for operators, for planners that, here at Atomic we're associated with. And but how did you get connected? It's been 5 years.
Yeah. I got connected with Charles actually before he ran startups. He had his own business and was always kind of tangentially involved. So I kind of knew Charles when he started startups. He reached out and told me he was building this awesome community, and started out very, very small. And he's done an incredible job just nurturing it, finding different, what's the right way for us to communicate and have a platform for operators to just share what their pain points are and, find support with the community. And, we just had a dinner this week with all the New York City crew. I think there was about 20 of us. And we were just saying how the community is there's just a lot of humility, where everyone's just open to asking questions and saying, hey, I'm struggling with this. Who can help me? And it's really empowering just to hear all of these people jumping in with all their perspectives and willing to connect people with other people in the industry. And it's really just a really great community.
That's awesome. That's so great. I know that a lot of work has been put into building that community. We have an advisor network here that we're trying to build community around and connectivity among the network of advisors and such. And so we definitely look at startups as being some inspiration for that as well, because I think you guys have done just a great job there.
Yeah, Charles and Keith and a few of the others have really put in some impressive time to make it what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a cool thing. I remember, I think it was Chad, actually, Chad Brennan, who was saying it's not competitive, right? So, like, you're an operator. I mean, it's whatever, but the marketers probably wouldn't be so readily happy to like compare how to hack the algorithms on, get better pricing, whatever. But like operators, it's fine. It's something where you can be collaborative. It's nice that it lends itself to that.
I completely agree. There's no kind of holding back or, oh, is this too exposing to share? It's just everyone's laid bare.
One question, Archie, I like to ask our guests is whether they're a planner in real life. You do a lot of planning at your day job, but outside of that, are you a planner?
I would say in some ways. My wife is an event planner, so she takes the cake for planning.
She outplanned you. Okay, yeah.
She
Okay.
outplans me. I would say in my day-to-day, I'm almost more of just like an efficiency hawk. It's to a point where I'm just like, how can I wash these dishes in the most efficient way? And how can I stack them so that I don't have to stop and dry and then start washing again? Right. Like that's how my mind is working, is just like, how can I organize all the things in my house? Because I've got a 2-year-old, right? So there's just stuff everywhere. I'm just like, okay, organize, boom, boom, boom. Okay, then we go here. So that's more of my energy versus maybe like the traditional planner vibe.
I am so particular when it comes to the dishwasher. There is only one perfect way to load it. And if it's not 99% maximized, if forks are like positioned one way and then the other way, there's a gap in space, you're just wasting space.
You just wasted energy,
Exactly.
which is getting more expensive.
I mean, hey, I had to spend all this money to get solar panels, but whatever.
Yeah. Totally.
Arch, what do you think is like the next frontier for planning, or like what's like the thing that you're trying to figure out right now?
I think this agentic AI stuff is just, that's where it's at. I think that the AI stuff of, hey, if your data's right, planning should actually be pretty simple, right? Where it's just your data in, your inventory needs to be accurate, your demand needs to have forecast accuracy, and your POs deliver on time. All that happens, planning's pretty simple. But I think like AI is like the forecast accuracy, especially for high growth startups, is like not, I don't think it lends itself to AI very well because it's not historical, right? It's like how much cash you have in the bank and how much are you going to funnel into marketing and what types of partnerships are you doing? Do you have retail launches? What does that look like? It's like that type of stuff is just hard to get into a model, whereas AI is going to crush with apparel planning, right? For Nike. Great. Perfect. They'll do great there. But I think where it's really hard is just the amount of time it takes to follow up with vendors, to ask the right questions, to figure out where the risk is within the supply chain. I think that's the hardest part, where often you just kind of get hit in the face with it and you hope that it's early enough for you to do something about it. And so I think that's where this type of AI software that can proactively reach out to suppliers and have conversations and just basically like be more boots on the ground for you. That's where I see the next frontier.
Yeah, there's like a category of things that were highly manual and hard to automate that are now automatable. And then there's a category of things that you wish you could do, but it didn't have the time or like wasn't even really possible because they were so manual that it was like, there's some cool examples, deduction management or like refunds and things like that, where folks are like, yeah, I know if I go one by one, I'm going to hit some like jackpot eventually,
Yeah.
right? That's only 1% or 2% of these things. I don't have time to dedicate an analyst. I've got other things to do. But like you put AI on that and it just finds them, right? It turns over all the stones and it finds them. And it's just like easy money. How do you think about like AI talking to your suppliers? How do they feel about it? How would you imagine that kind of like playing out? Yeah, the human AI interface like is to me like the most interesting thing because like under the hood, like the technology works, but also then you get people who are like, well, I prompted it and the email that it wrote wasn't perfect. I'm like, okay, then did you change that line and then it was good? Yeah, but it wasn't perfect. I'm like, okay, take a step back, right? But then how a human can feel comfortable knowing that it's kind of generated. And so that's where now a customer is responding to a chat bot. Like we all have had those experiences.
I think that's a great question. And I think it's something that there'd probably be some issues that come up where it's like, oh, well, wait, it said something I didn't want it to say. Right. And so it's like, I think that is something that.
So to be fair, like humans do that too all the time. Right?
Exactly. Totally. Totally. So yeah, I think it would have to start like very simple. But I mean, just the complexity at which the models are developing, shouldn't be naive to think that they can't, have back and forths a couple times with suppliers troubleshooting a piece.
Well, Archie, I want to be respectful of your time. I know you've got 2 additional meetings after this before you head into the weekend. So I just want to say thank you so much.
With a 2-year-old. Yeah.
And a 2-year-old and a dishwasher to load.
Oh, thanks, guys. This has been fun. Really appreciate it.
It was great. All right, Archie, thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Later, guys. Bye.
Bye.